All right, folks are still jumping on in, but since we have a full packed hour tonight, I'm going to go ahead and launch us off. If you haven't had a chance to meet me yet, my name is Kay. I use they, them pronouns. I'm the executive director here at Pennsylvania Interfaith Power and Light. I am delighted to welcome you to tonight's conversation, which is part of our ongoing Wandering Watersheds series, where we're exploring Pennsylvania's watersheds, both their challenges, as well as their beauty, and how we can be involved in help keeping them protected. So tonight we have a great lineup of speakers that I'm really excited to bring and share to you this evening. A couple of just quick reminders as we get started. The first is that we always want to start by acknowledging that we are here and residing upon Indigenous lands. I'm joining you tonight from the lands that are known as Lenni Lenape. And so if you're not sure which lands you reside on, whether you're here from Pennsylvania or you're joining us from one of our neighboring states, there is a website that you can check out, and we'll pop the link to that in the chat as we go through the night, or it's on the screen in front of you now. Moving with a praxis towards environmental justice is a commitment that PA IPL is committed to making. And back in August, we did ratify our first environmental justice statement. And so one of my team members will also share that in the chat. If you're interested in knowing more about how we're orienting, not just in this series, but across our wider programming, and making sure that we tell the stories of the people who are most impacted as we work to create solutions that work for all of us. I'll also share a brief bit more about this later, hopefully, if we don't run out of time. But our Watershed Circle cohort for 2025 is up and applications are open. You all are getting the first sneak peek tonight to that application form. It has not been sent out yet. I'll talk a little bit more about that coaching cohort that's going to be available in spring and what's involved, but we will also share a link to that for those of you who have been waiting for that registration to drop. So those are all the updates from me. I'm glad that you're here tonight. And so I'm going to go ahead and welcome our first speaker. So up first, we have Amani Reed, who is working for the Office of Environmental Justice at PA Department of Environmental Protection. Currently, she serves there in a role as the Eastern Regional Coordinator within the Office of Environmental Justice. She holds a bachelor's in political science with an environmental studies minor from Temple University, and is also a former U.S. Army reservist. Amani is a saxophonist, a clarinetist, and a traveler. Her past work includes climate justice organizer with Power Interfaith, policy engagement manager for Pennsylvania Interfaith Power and Light, so we're delighted to welcome her back this evening, and also as the legislative aide for State Representative Donna Bullock. So Amani, thank you for being here. The floor is all yours.
Thank you so much. And I just want to say, I know I don't have too much time, but special shout out to you, Katie, and just Pennsylvania Interfaith for all your support over the years. I'm really, really happy and to be back. And with that, I'm going to share my screen. I won't waste any time. I'm very happy to be here. Once again, my name is Amani Reed. I serve as the Eastern Coordinator with the DEP Office of Environmental Justice. Give me one second. All righty. And I'm going to talk a bit just about the Department of Environmental Protection, also our office, but I know that the topic at hand is waterways, our watershed. So I'm going to have some information that I actually got from our water program, specifically from our Bureau of Clean Water in our Harrisburg office. But just to start, our mission is to protect Pennsylvania's air, land, and water from pollution, provide for the health and safety of citizens for a cleaner environment, and we work with partners, individuals, organizations, governments, and businesses to prevent pollution and protect and restore our natural environment. We are responsible for the administration of Pennsylvania's laws and regulations, also committed to general environmental education and encouraging effective public involvement in setting environmental policy. We have 6 regional offices. My experience last year, specifically when I joined in April, I was covering the southeastern and northeastern regions. So I did a lot of work in Wilkes-Barre, Lehigh, Allentown, Scranton. This year, I'm focused in the southeast region, so I'm doing a lot more hands-on and one-on-one work in the southeastern region to include Philadelphia and throughout the region, Bucks County, Delaware County. And for anyone that's outside of this southeast region, I have contacts for our coordinators in that area. And just a bit about DEP's vision, moving towards the speed of business that leads the way in science, innovation, and best practices in clean air, land, and water. Our vision at the Office of Environmental Justice is to face environmental challenges by the environmental justice and vulnerable populations dealing with injustices, disproportionate impacts, and we're using external facing tactics. My job as a coordinator is to keep Pennsylvania residents, and most specifically Southeastern residents, informed of permitting, complaints, grants, resources. We work with other departments and stakeholders like our federal and state agencies in order to give the public more of a voice in the permitting process. So I hold public meetings and hearings. We have a central office which has other programs, for example, our water program, which is developing regulations and policies, administering grants, and they also do permitting activities like dams. And also, just to get into our regional programs, we have a clean water program at our Southeastern office in Norristown. They cover sewage planning, non-point discharge elimination system or NPDES permits and discharge permits, as well as spills and stream assessments. We have 24/7 inspectors, and we have a complaints team that works 24/7, and we do have a 24/7 emergency line for any types of issues that may happen in our waterways. We also have a safe drinking water program in the Southeastern office that handles our public water systems permitting and compliance. They handle things like boil water advisories, and we've seen some of those things happen in our state in the last few years, as well as lead and copper rules. And I'm giving a lot of information to the community, also for questions and concerns or even information on things like our waterways, lead. So I just want to mention that I'm always here as a resource and contact to direct people to the right information and the right individuals in our department. And we also have the Waterways and Wetlands Department, which handles stream and wetland encroachment permitting, as well as erosion control and stormwater permitting. And then they also handle things like dam safety. And we also have inspectors in that area as well. And then our watershed restoration and non-point source management program handles reduction for farm runoff, things like abandoned mine drainage issues, stream restoration, and they also improve urban stormwater problems. We have grants and resources in our department too, which are handling things in the relation of clean water and our waterways. And just before I get into this very quickly, and I want to be mindful of the time, so just to get into some of the information from our Bureau of Safe Drinking Water specifically, they wanted me to share on the call tonight, but they are focused in Harrisburg. They're focused on managing the federally delegated drinking water programs and implementing federal and state safe drinking water acts and associated regulations. And to carry out this mission, their mission, which is protecting Pennsylvania residents from microbiological, chemical, and radiological contaminants in drinking water for all of our residents. They're doing things like surveillance, compliance, enforcement, and permitting activities, and 9,200 public water systems throughout our state. They're handling things like chemical spills, floods and droughts, waterborne diseases and outbreaks. They train and certify drinking water and wastewater treatment operators for over 10,000 plants. And then we have a Bureau of Waterways, Engineering and Wetlands. And just for some of the differences, the waterway protection focuses on physical impacts like dams, bridges, and the water quality protection focuses more on the water itself. And the clean water program focuses on the quality of the water and streams, resulting mostly from point source discharges. The Safe Drinking Water program looks at the quality of water from streams and groundwater. So I know that this is a lot of information, and then we also have our watershed restoration and non-point source management program, which handles improving, protecting, and restoring local water. I know this is a lot of information, and I'm going to drop some information in the chat to include a newsletter that our drinking water program has, and we also have a mapping tool. But very quickly, because I know I only have a few minutes, but what you see on our screen is a new mapping tool that is implemented into the Department of Environmental Protection as of September 16th of last year. And this is what I use a lot on my day-to-day work as far as looking at what communities, what our counties, what our cities look like as far as environmental justice responsibilities like environmental, economic, socioeconomic impact. You'll see some of them on this screen, but I want to point out some of these indicators on our mapper that we're looking at. You'll see in pollution burdens, there's flood risk. You'll also see that we have things like oil and gas, we have hazardous waste, we also have lead, we're looking at particulate matter. So there's a lot that we are looking to also incorporate into our mapping tool, and we are actually revising it every few years. And I know that a lot of the concerns and a lot of what Pennsylvania residents want to have more attention on is our waterways, clean water, our streams. So there's a lot of attention that we're putting on that internally to incorporate more of that into the work that we do. This is just our contact information. You'll see mine there as well as my other coordinators, and I'm going to drop that in the chat as well. And I'm also happy to answer any questions at the end of this meeting. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Amani. That was a whirlwind ride through what PADEP, and particularly the Office of Environmental Justice, and how those intersect. I think a really common question that I get in our work is, well, like, how does climate change or faith communities or even water concerns, how does that tie in to environmental justice? And my answer is completely. They are one and the same. So thank you, Amani, for walking us through some of that and the way that your office is helping to help Pennsylvania's waterways and its people, because those things are interconnected. Up next, we have Nicole. So let me tell you a little bit about Nicole. Nicole is a senior life scientist in the Water Division of Environmental Protection Agency's Region 3 office in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. She serves as an advisor on the Delaware River Basin and is facilitating a strategy across divisions and programs to holistically improve water quality in the basin. She is a lead for engaging communities facing environmental justice. Nicole uses her prior experience at the Federal Emergency Management Agency to integrate hazard mitigation and climate adaptation into water quality improvements. I'm delighted to welcome her here this evening. You should have screen permission shared now, and so I'll turn it on over to you.
Okay. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
You're good.
It was telling me to unmute, but I thought I was already unmuted. So I'm Nicole. Thank you for the introduction. And my presentation is going to be another whirlwind, but luckily, a lot of the programs that the Environmental Protection Agency has are very similar to the programs offered at PADEP. And you'll have to bear with me. I am not a former employee of Interfaith Power and Light. So I kind of, I did pick Amani's brain a bit, but I kind of guessed a bit at what would be interesting to you all. So hopefully I hit the nail on the head. If I'm missing anything that you're interested in, please feel free to ask questions or drop them in the chat. I wish I had a good slide like Amani did. I think I have a geographic image map of the areas we cover, but Region 3 at the Environmental Protection Agency covers the states of Pennsylvania, Virginia, Delaware, Maryland, DC, and West Virginia. And our mission is to protect people and the environment. And we focus on protections for land, water, and air. And with that, I'm going to dive in. So this is, and the slides will be available to you after I put a lot of detail in here, just so that you can have it for reference later. If you, are wondering like, who was the person that I should talk to about X, Y, or Z, you're obviously free to reach out to me, but this gives you some reference materials here. So I'm going to basically walk through the 4 branches, which are the names you see here in like a teal blue-ish color in the middle, and talk to you about each of the programs that they have. But first, I just wanted to tell you their names and sort of like the short nickname version of what I have characterized the work that they do. So going left to right, state assistance and partnerships branch pretty much handles all of our funding. And that is our grant programs as well as our state revolving fund loan programs. Next, we have the wetlands branch, which handles wetlands permitting and program. Their name is pretty much what they do. We also have the drinking water branch, which implements the Safe Drinking Water Act and makes sure that the water we drink is safe. And the Clean Water branch implements the Clean Water Act, which really focuses more on water quality in streams and rivers to make sure they are safe for aquatic life and for recreation, like fishing and swimming. And I'm going to take a deeper dive, starting in that same order. So starting with the funding branch, they really focus on state and watershed partnerships, and then more state and local municipal groups. So we're starting here with the grants that are available to state and watershed partnerships. And I'm going to give you a couple examples where there have been faith-based groups who have gotten involved in some of these grant programs and maybe some opportunities that I see. So the first two I wanted to mention in a little more detail are the water pollution control grants and the water quality management planning grants. These grants can include monitoring efforts, which are often supported by citizen or participatory science. PADEP has a citizen science guide, which I did link in the notes to this slideshow. So when you get your hands on it, you will have those resources available to you. And I also called out a few other groups that I think are good examples of this, including Save Our Streams in Pennsylvania, which runs a nationwide citizen science organization, as well as Alliance for the Chesapeake Bay. So there are, I think, a number of opportunities where if you're thinking about ways to get involved, that could be a good example. Another place you might engage is in local non-point source programs. One example of this is the School Kill Action Network. They do a lot of cleanups, storm drain labeling, and education programs, and are always looking for partners in the community to help spread the word for their events and also to get involved. Our national estuary programs are place-based, non-regulatory programs with the goal of protecting and restoring water quality in our estuaries. We have the Delaware Estuary in Southeast Pennsylvania, and the estuary governance structures they function as what's called like a management conference, meaning stakeholders, including federal, state, local, and community members, really work together to identify what the problems and solutions are and develop and implement a comprehensive conservation management plan. In addition to that, the Partnership for the Delaware Estuary is the host for the Urban Waters Delaware River location, which focuses largely Wilmington, Chester, Philadelphia, and Camden, but are always looking for folks who could get more involved. And while the Green Streets, Green Jobs, Green Towns, or G3 grant program is limited to funding stormwater projects that support Chesapeake Bay watershed, I did want to call out an example of a project where St. Agnes Catholic Church in Shepherdstown, West Virginia, was basically a pilot project for stormwater infrastructure improvements, as well as pollinator gardens and native planting gardens that additionally helped alleviate stormwater runoff. So I think this is another place where faith-based organizations can sort of play a lead role in helping people get more familiar with these ideas and technologies and see them firsthand. Okay, sorry, the slide didn't advance for me. This example, I cannot say EPA had any involvement with, although I did get to tour it once, so I wanted to share it with you. It was funded by a PA DEP Growing Greener grant. And again, it's a synagogue in Elkins Park that did a watershed improvement project. Their campus kind of sloped towards Leach's Run, which was a Tookenny Creek tributary, and they were having actual flooding that was impacting their building as a result of poor runoff from their parking lot. So they were able to add a bioretention island and impervious surface reduction, as well as subsurface storage and a rain garden. And you see here a quote from the rabbi talking about how not only did it reduce the potential for harm to their physical building, but it also helped improve the health of the Tookenny watershed. So another example where faith-based groups are sort of leading the way. So that concludes sort of the overview of the state and watershed partnership grants. I'm moving now into some of the other funding that typically goes directly to our state partners through the Clean Water and Drinking Water State Revolving Funds, both of which were significantly supplemented by the bipartisan infrastructure law funding, with 43 billion additional dollars to Clean Water SRF and Drinking Water SRF, and then 5 in emerging contaminant funds. And while this money does go to the state, and then the state, prioritizes projects, I do think that there are ways faith-based groups can explore how they might partner with other groups to access some of this funding. In addition to the SRFs, which is the vast majority of the funding that comes out of the water department or water division, we do have a few other programs here that we manage, but I'm not going to go into a ton of detail because I'm not sure that they have a lot of relevance to this audience. Moving into the wetlands branch, fills the role that you're probably the most likely familiar with in permitting of fill in wetlands areas, done in partnership with the Army Corps of Engineers. But you may not be as familiar with the fact that every state has a wetland program, and the goal is to restore and protect this water resource, and there's always room for participation and involvement in these programs. So I would encourage you to get more involved in that if that is of something of interest. Our drinking water folks, as I mentioned, again, are the ones who are really overseeing that where states have the delegated enforcement responsibility for public water system supervision, that we are getting safe drinking water. EPA has primary designation for the District of Columbia, but I'm not sure that you all really care that much about that fact. And in addition to, just making sure that the water's clean, we do play a role in water security, which increasingly has a cybersecurity component to it, but also managing events that happen, like potential spills and things like that. This team, the drinking water team, also handles the underground injection control process, but again, I'm not going to dive into that in any detail tonight. I just wanted to make sure you knew it was a program there, and if you have any more questions, we can talk. And finally, the Clean Water branch. They are responsible for essentially managing water quality standards, which are established through a designated use for a particular water body, water quality criteria that protect that designated use and make sure that it is not degraded. They also are responsible for the states, supporting the states in listing the impaired and threatened waters that they have, or the 303D lists. States have to submit those to EPA for approval every 2 years. And there are ways to get involved, again, here through monitoring and citizen science. And I did put some contacts, again, that would be through your partners at PA. There's also a link here to My Waterway, which you can use to check if any of the waters in your area are impaired or threatened, and by what. And the National Pollution Discharge Elimination System, which is NPDES, regulates all point source discharges into waters of the US. That is pretty much how we are managing, to make sure that waters are clean. And states play a primary role in this process, and there is the opportunity for public participation in the NPDES permit process. So again, another place where you might be able to plug in. A couple key NPDES nutrient and sediment sources that are often what are focused on when issuing those permits. And last but not least, these slides actually cover some information that is outside of the water division, but I felt it was important to mention because it is very timely. So in addition to the large supplement of funding that we got through the bipartisan infrastructure law for water infrastructure, there additionally was funding for environmental justice work. And each region has what's being called a grant maker. Our grant maker in Region 3 is the Green and Healthy Homes Initiative, which sounds like an initiative, but is in fact a group of people who are serving as the grant maker. And their web link is here. They are managing a substantial amount of money, $3 billion through what's being called community change grants. The application window is open right now and closes on December 30th of this year. And there is technical assistance to support folks who might be interested in pursuing the different tracks that are available. You can see that there is a track 1, per award amount is at $10 million and can't exceed 20. But track 2 is smaller at 1 million and can't exceed 3. And the links to the technical assistance providers are here should anybody be interested. And this is just my name and phone number and email in case anyone wants to be in touch about anything.
Thank you, Nicole. I smiled when I saw that come up on your screen because PA IPL is planning on making an application to that grant pot. So if you are on here and you're part of a faith community or a smaller community organization that wants in on that grant opportunity, come and have a conversation with me. I'd love to chat with you and work together. It can be a really big lift to get a grant up, I know, especially if you're small. And so we'd love to partner with you on putting in that application or helping you figure out how to get touched into that program too. So Nicole, thanks for sharing that. All right. Also, I'll quickly say that there's some questions in the chat. So I'm going to direct Amani and Nicole there if you have a moment and have any answers you want to give to those. And I am going to move us on to the second half of our program now. So we spent the first half of our program hearing from our regulators at the state and then federal level. And so now we're going to hear from our advocate side a little bit more on what happens once those dollars or those regulations transform or transitioned over into community spaces. So up first, we have Michael Maraza, who serves as Advocacy Manager at Penn Future, a statewide environmental advocacy organization. As Advocacy Manager, Michael plays a pivotal role in bolstering Penn Future's legislative and advocacy initiatives, coordinating meetings, conducting legislative research, crafting policy material, and representing Penn Future in meetings with external stakeholders. In addition, Michael serves as the Pennsylvania lead on the Choose Clean Water Coalition. Thank you for your great work there, Michael. Pennsylvania Interfaith Power and Light is a member. And that group, if you're not familiar with it, advocates for clean rivers and streams in all communities throughout the Chesapeake Bay. So, Michael, thanks for being here. I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Kay, and thank you so much, PA Interfaith Power and Light, for allowing me to speak this evening. As Kay mentioned, I'm Michael Mahrazar, he, him, and I hope, just like Nicole and Amani, I hope folks brought their life jackets because there's a whirlwind of information I'm going to share. But I did put some contact information, so feel free to reach out if you have specific questions. And apologies in advance if I go through the slides fairly quickly. Happy to share the slides afterwards if folks are interested. Before jumping into some of the specifics, I always like to, we're talking about advocacy, and just like to have like a basic definition of what I mean when I say advocacy. So advocacy is about using our collective voice to create public demand and build the power necessary to achieve a goal. And I bolded some of those keywords that I think are really important, particularly I think collective, all of us here, some of the coalitions I'll be talking about. And having a goal in mind, having very specific objectives that you're going to. I also just put some of really inspiring environmental justice and just environmental advocates that I think all of us could learn from. And then not going to spend too much time here, but when we talk about advocacy, I just wanted to make sure everyone was on the same page. And I think this is a great example of what individual actions versus collective advocacy actions can look like. So two of the main sources of water pollution we face in Pennsylvania are agriculture runoff and municipal stormwater runoff. And as an individual, if you're a farmer, you can go about planting cover crops, and that is amazing, and we encourage that. If you are a congregation, you can go about planting a rain garden. That's amazing, and I encourage that. What we, though, do as an advocacy group is we look to make sure that there's the funding available for these programs, that there are the mechanisms to provide training and support to look on a broad scale. So that is really the kind of things that we talk about when we're talking about watershed advocacy. Just real quick overview of my organization, Penn Future. We're a statewide environmental advocacy organization. So we are not generally the ones that are digging, getting our hands dirty in the ground. Instead, we're frequently getting our hands dirty in the courtrooms or in the state capitol. But we're a statewide group, works to protect our air, water, land, and empowering citizens and all residents to build sustainable communities. We're the state affiliate of the National Wildlife Federation, and we have a strategic partnership with another statewide environmental group, Conservation Voters of PA. We serve as the state lead for 3 major watershed coalitions, and I'll touch more on this soon. And as I kind of touched on, there's 3 big focuses that we are focused on at Penn Future. We have a great legal team that looks to make sure that regulations, we are commenting on those as they work their way down the pipe. If there's a need, we'll engage in lawsuits. Policy team that researches what are the best policies that Pennsylvania can pursue and what can we do in the state capitol to try to get as many of those as possible. And then outreach, educational outreach like we're doing tonight, but also making sure folks are connected to take actions, whether that's writing letters to the editor or meeting with a legislator. So if you'd like to learn more, check out the link in the chat. So just a quick overview, many of you may know, but in addition to, I always love the Native Lands website that indicates what are the indigenous lands that we reside on. And I always love that. But I also think it's important that folks should probably know what watershed they live in. And most folks, they have no clue. Maybe folks on this call do. So this is just a good overview of what are the 6 major watersheds we face in Pennsylvania. Eastern side, Delaware River Basin. Central is Susquehanna and Potomac, and both of those ultimately flow into the Chesapeake Bay, so I might call that the Bay watershed. The Ohio River Basin is most of the west, and then a very tiny part in north central is the Genesee River. That ultimately goes to Lake Ontario, and then the Lake Erie obviously goes to Lake Erie. So Delaware, Chesapeake, Ohio, and the Great Lakes are really the main things. And as you'll see, those are the river watershed coalitions I'll be talking about. Just some other information about Pennsylvania waterways. We have 86,000 miles of rivers, streams, etc., which is extremely it's a lot. It's only second to Alaska, yet Pennsylvania is geographically a much smaller state. And 33% are estimated to be impaired, which means they're not meeting certain qualifications of cleanliness. So we have a lot of water, and a lot of it is not where it should be. So we have a lot of work to do. So I'm going to just briefly talk a little bit about three of the big watershed organizations we have, and also mention the state leads that are involved. So starting with the eastern portion of the state, we have the Coalition for the Delaware River Watershed, which runs from New York to Delaware, includes PA and New Jersey. They represent 180 member organizations, which provides drinking water for over 13 million people. And all three of the watersheds, in addition to focusing on PA actions, have a strong federal component. Generally in March, all three of the watersheds groups I talk about go to DC to advocate for federal policy. And being a coalition with folks from across the region really helps provide the resources. So if you're in Philly, if you're in Allentown, if you're in the Poconos, definitely encourage you to take a look at the Coalition for the Delaware River Watershed. My colleague Ezra Thrush, pictured here, is the state lead. He was a Penn Future employee, serves as state lead. Choose Clean Water Coalition, very similar coalition that is over 300 organizations that represents the whole Chesapeake Bay watershed from New York to Virginia, West Virginia to Delaware, includes Washington, D.C. as well. And I serve as the state lead for that. And again, if you're in the central part of the state, the central 50% approximately, you are in the Chesapeake Bay watershed, either the Susquehanna or the Potomac, and would love to connect with you. And as Kay mentioned, Interfaith Power and Light is a fantastic member of our coalition. And then the final one I'll touch on that we have connected here in Pennsylvania is the Healing Our Waters Great Lakes Coalition. And so this is primarily focused in the Lake Erie region, although I don't know at this time if there's any groups in the Genesee River watershed that are part of this. But this is a fairly geographically small portion of our state, but still incredibly important, and actually the largest in terms of the whole watershed and representing 30 million people. And if you've been paying attention, you may know, well, what about the Ohio River? That does not have a water coalition. Well, it doesn't have a water coalition yet. I know partners are meeting across the various states in the Ohio River, including Kentucky, Tennessee, Indiana, etc. So it is something that is hoping to get off the ground in the near future. So if you are represented in the western portion of the state, please stay tuned. We hope to get something off the ground shortly. So that was kind of a brief run through of some of the big advocacy watershed organizations. I'm now going to quickly go through some federal and state issues that we're looking at that really run the gamut from the next few weeks to the next year and beyond. Again, this is a pretty quick run through. So if you have specific questions, feel free to put in the chat. I'll try to answer, or feel free to reach out in my email, and I'll do my best to answer. So when we look at the federal realm, there's obviously a lot that the next Congress, the next administration is expected to do, and there's a lot to talk about that. But there's actually a lot that is going to be happening in the next 2 weeks, potentially. The big thing is there are 3 different basin-specific authorization programs, and there's a mixture of what these do. For example, I'm most familiar, being the Choose Clean Water state lead, with the American Conservation Enhancement Act, which essentially reauthorizes a number of important Chesapeake Bay programs from EPA and fish and boat and et cetera. But there's also the Delaware River Basin Restoration Program, the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative Act. They've had different levels of some have passed the Senate and are waiting in the House. Within these next few weeks, there is a big hope to get one or all of these really important authorization bills into the National Defense Authorization Act, NDAA. Those are one of those annual authorization acts that Congress has to pass every year. And it's a great opportunity to add on other authorization acts as riders. So there is an intent from all three of those coalitions I mentioned earlier to push all of these very, very important bills. So just wanted to let you know about that. And then the other one is the Farm Bill. The Farm Bill could be a whole talk on itself, but essentially it has a huge conservation component that is part of the Farm Bill. The Farm Bill is expected to have a continuing resolution, which means they'll kick the ball down the road. But then next year, with unified control of Congress, it is expected that they will pass a farm bill. We will do everything we can to make sure it has as many strong conservation provisions in it as possible. Finally, moving to the state issues. So one of the big things is always funding for a lot of those pollution reduction efforts I mentioned earlier. In this year's budget in July, the Pennsylvania General Assembly passed something called the Clean Streams Fund. It was actually a continuation, and it was a $50 million commitment for an annual investment in addressing the three big forms of pollution in Pennsylvania: water pollution, which is, as I mentioned, agriculture runoff, municipal stormwater runoff, and acid mine drainage. Clean Stream Fund deals with all of those, and it's a big commitment. We want to make sure that that $50 million stays in the state budget, and if possible, expand that. There's also Growing Greener. Growing Greener has been a long time program and funding source to help things like trails, libraries, even farmland preservation. Unfortunately, there hasn't been a recent expansion of Growing Greener in many, many years. And so pushing for Growing Greener is one of the big things we'd like to do. Another challenge that we're facing, next to are kind of challenges, there is increased energy demands. We're seeing it with data centers from artificial intelligence and cryptocurrencies. We're seeing it with extensive electric vehicles. And also, as we transition away from fossil fuels, which is a good thing, we want to make sure that the solar that is sited or that is installed is done in a proper way, and that's known as solar siting. So making sure we install solar, but in a way with minimizing water damage is really important. And then the final thing I'll just quickly mention is protecting water regulations. There's going to be a lot of attempts from the federal government, but even the state government, both the General Assembly and even within the DEP, Department of Environmental Protection, to weaken water regulations and to make it easier for polluters to pollute without having to report it. That is something strongly that we and our coalition partners are really focused on. So I know that was quite a bit. Feel free to call or email, and I'm happy to look through the questions for the rest of the talk. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. And I know I put up a note in the chat, but I know we've had 3 very full presentations and we have 1 more to go. But don't worry, this is being recorded. You will be able to rewatch it as many times as you would like to. And we will be including all the information that each of these presenters are sharing in our follow-up email that will go out. Give us about a week or 2 to get all those pieces figured out, but it will land in your inbox, and that will be a resource for you in perpetuity. Last but certainly not least, I'm delighted to welcome Lindsay Walker here this evening. Lindsay Walker is the Senior Manager of Education and Community Conservation for National Wildlife Federation's Mid-Atlantic region. Along with her team, she partners with community groups in urban centers, particularly focused on Baltimore, Wilmington, Lancaster, and Philadelphia, to create native pollinator habitat at community-based sites, organize environmental education events, and implement NIFWIF's Garden for Wildlife and Eco Schools programs locally. She is based in Philadelphia, and she's going to tell us a little bit more about a growing partnership between PA IPL and NIFWIF Sacred Grounds Project, which I am so excited about. So over to you, Lindsay.
Thank you so much, Kay, and thank you all so much for sticking out and still being here with me this evening. And I also want to commend and thank all of my co-presenters tonight for staying on time and actually giving me a time to share my slides. So thank you so much. I'm excited to get started. Let me just go ahead and share my slides. Here we go. And then we'll go into presenter mode. There we go. And you guys can see my screen. No, wait, I'm not going to presenter mode. There we are. Okay. Now you all can see my slides, right? Okay, good. All right. So I am here tonight to talk about the Sacred Grounds program. I will just go ahead and dive right in. First, I'll say a note about National Wildlife Federation. We are a national nonprofit organization, and our mission is to unite all Americans to ensure wildlife and people thrive in a rapidly changing world. I love that mission. We are America's largest and most trusted conservation organization. We've been around since 1936. NWF does a lot of different types of work. We do policy work at the federal and regional level. As Michael mentioned earlier, we have an affiliate in every single state. So we are a true federation. And those affiliates make up part of our governing board and help to set our policy agenda every year. And we're very lucky to have a great partnership with Penn Future as our affiliate in Pennsylvania. We also do a lot of education and community programming that's more on the ground and less policy oriented, but of course informed by the policy work. And that is where I focus. I focus on that work in the Mid-Atlantic region, which includes Pennsylvania and many other states. And like Kay said, I'm based in Philadelphia, but I grew up in Carlisle, Pennsylvania, so I also have a soft spot in my heart for Central PA. And I'm here tonight to talk to you about our Sacred Grounds program. So this is a national program, but my team and I work to implement it in the Mid-Atlantic region. And this program recognizes and supports faith-based congregations that create wildlife habitat and engage their communities in environmental stewardship. So my program is connected to water in that you are creating habitat and often doing lawn conversion where you're taking a space from turf grass to a more naturalized habitat, which is very good for water infiltration, stormwater management, water quality, and you're also creating habitat at the same time. It is the program that I run in Sacred Grounds is less about the big numbers of the impact and more about the personal community connections with this type of work and providing you all and your communities with concrete hands-on work that you can do to make a difference in your community and really connect with this work. So, and I'll keep going. So I mentioned Sacred Grounds is a national program. We have partnerships in the Washington, D.C. and Maryland, or greater Washington, D.C. area, Great Lakes region. We have also done some projects in Baltimore. And I will, in a few minutes, I'll tell you about a great project we did over the last few years in Wilmington, Delaware, and I will be excited to share that we are bringing Sacred Grounds officially to Philadelphia as well. Sacred Grounds is part of National Wildlife Federation's Certified Wildlife Habitat Program. You may have heard of this before. You can actually apply and for many different sites in your community or at your home to get your space certified as official wildlife habitat through the National Wildlife Federation. Sacred Grounds is one of those certification programs. I strongly encourage you to visit nwf.org/garden, which has a ton of resources about how to do native plant gardening, native wildlife gardening, in a variety of locations, as well as nwf.org/sacred grounds, which has more specific information about this program. Most people, I would say, who participate in the Sacred Grounds program actually interact with it as a self-serve program. You don't have to have a special partnership with NWF to do it. You can go on the website, you can look at the requirements, you can say, hey, I want to do this, I want to bring it to my community, do the work, and then apply for certification all on your own. NWF does focus on specific priority areas where we build partnerships to bring this programming to communities where we feel like it is a critical piece of the environmental justice work that needs to happen in that area. And that is how Katie and I are partnering in the next couple of years. I'm really excited. So I'll quickly mention our work in Wilmington, Delaware from 2022 to 23. So we got funding from the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation, which is a federal agency that has a very similar name to my organization, but it is National Fish and Wildlife Foundation, and actually through their Delaware River Watershed Conservation Fund. So Michael was mentioning some of those federal level appropriations. That kind of work, that kind of funding at the federal level funds programming like this in communities, this small scale community-driven, education-based projects. So you can see here some of the awesome pictures from the program, and I'll share a little bit more about it right now. We installed 21 gardens at 21 faith-based institutions, houses of worship in Wilmington, Delaware. We created over 6,500 square feet of native habitat, installing over 5,000 native plants. We distributed $30,000 in mini grants to our participating community congregations to activate and support those gardens. We engaged over 300 people, and we hosted a whole series of events and workshops to help congregations understand how to design and install and maintain these gardens. We also created a really fun story map that has a ton of information about the program, all the participating houses of worship, pictures of the installations. You can scan this QR code if you would like. And as KK said, that this will be sent out. So if you miss it now, you'll get a chance to do that later. That's a really comprehensive resource to show the work that we did in Wilmington. Our partners on that project were Delaware Interfaith Power and Light, as well as the Delaware Nature Society, who is our affiliate in Delaware, and the Delaware Center for Horticulture. I have to mention those folks, of course. And then, as I mentioned, this was funded by the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service through their Delaware Watershed Conservation Fund. And here you can see up here at the top right, this was a really fun event where all the participating congregations from the first year of the project officially got their Sacred Grounds Habitat Certified Wildlife signs. That was a really fun celebration. So the very exciting and perhaps more relevant news for you all is that we have gotten a second round of funding to do this program again. We will be doing it in Wilmington, but we're also going to bring it to Philadelphia, specifically, hopefully Southwest Philadelphia, and engage at least 3 congregations there through this program and support them with a really robust slate of activities to make sure that everyone has the capacity and the knowledge and the resources to make sure that these gardens are successful long term. So here's what's on deck for the next project. I think one of the things I'm most excited about is that we will be working with Pennsylvania IPL to expand their faith-based watershed education curriculum to be relevant to the Sacred Grounds program, and we'll bring that to all the participating congregations. We'll also be hosting native plant giveaways, so not only will participating congregations get to have a garden at their site, but we'll also give native plants away to congregation members to plant at their homes. We'll be doing a series of workshops and field trips throughout the 3-year project, of course, providing stipends to participants to cover their time and their costs. And we'll also be doing a youth program. So I'm really excited to bring that piece in as well. So again, the funding and this full robust list of activities will be specific to the project partners that we're working with in Philadelphia. However, anyone can engage with this program. And we want a lot of the training opportunities, we want them to be available to anyone who wants to participate. So even if you're not a congregation who's getting their garden paid for through this grant, we still want you to welcome you as part of the community and invite you to share in some of the educational opportunities as well. So I think that's it. That was short and sweet. I tried to keep it very brief. Here is my contact information. And again, I will put this in the chat. And I'm happy to talk to anyone who's interested in implementing Sacred Grounds in your community or any of NWF's certified wildlife habitat programs. And I will also say we have a program called Eco Schools, through which we certify schools as green schools for doing environmental literacy and sustainability projects with students. So I'll just throw that out there as well. All right. I think
Thanks,
that's
Lindsay.
it. Hey, look, we have like 4 minutes to spare.
That's incredible. Gold star. All 4 of my presenters were in the room on time, and managed to keep us on time. So wonderful job, everybody. Lindsay, we have a question in the chat about, and I'm happy to answer this in terms of PA IPL, Native American traditional spirituality. So the way that PA IPL defines and talks about congregations, we use that interchangeably with community groups. So if you are convened in a community that practices a faith tradition or a cultural set of practices or spirituality or even anything, if you gather once a week to have coffee together, we consider you a community that is in community together. And so we work with people all across the spectrum. And so, Lindsay, I don't know if you want to say anything more to this particular
Please.
program, but the way we define communities is very expansive. And so very excited to work with anybody that would like to come alongside and work with us in this program.
Yes, absolutely. This is an interfaith program, and we do absolutely recognize a variety of sites as sacred grounds, as sacred land. We have a couple of our participants in the first round were actually cemeteries that weren't necessarily affiliated with a specific house of worship, and some of the pre-identified participants for our second round are also historically Black cemeteries. And very happy, very much open to defining other sites as sacred grounds. We're not in the business of telling communities what ground is sacred or not. That is up for you to decide. So very happy to have a conversation with that. And I will also note that we did connect with Chief Coker of the Lenape tribe in Delaware. It was just sort of a preliminary conversation. But very interested in continuing that conversation in Delaware and in Pennsylvania.
Thank you, Lindsay. And I'll echo that as a new partner in Sacred Grounds, we're really excited to bring more connections with our Indigenous community and along with other faith traditions to the table. So absolutely reach out. The table is open and we want to build it as large as we can. So with that, I'm just going to give us a couple of quick words, one of which is, if you like tonight's program, make sure to join us for the final one in this series, which is happening on January 14th. We have Monty Garber from Stroud Water Research Center, who's coming to tell us about actions you can take wherever you are located to heal and care for your watershed. And then we're also going to hear from 3 to 4 congregations across Pennsylvania who've already done something like this, who have taken a step, whether small or large, to plant trees or do something within their local community that's making an impact on the waterways that water and care for all of us. I will also say, I mentioned briefly at the beginning of the program, and I will send more out in the follow-up email that goes out, but our Watershed Circle, which is a 6-month coaching cohort for people who are individuals, who are looking to be equipped with leadership skills and technical support to take on community projects alongside either their congregation or community. Those could be educational, they might be planning, or they might be actual implementation. We want to help you take your next step in watershed work from here after we've spent time together in this series. So all of the details are in the application link, and there will be more details coming about that soon, but the application is open through, I believe it's January 20th or somewhere around there. So we'll be excited to welcome folks into a smaller community of practice on the other side of this seminar series. So for tonight, we're going to pause here, and as per usual, we're going to enter into breakout rooms for folks who are interested. So I'm going to go ahead and get those breakout rooms set up. So again, those are separated by watershed. So we have Delaware, Ohio, and the Chesapeake. And then if you're in one of the other 3 watersheds, you can hang out here in the main room with me. And then I will just also briefly say, Jada, are you on the call? We're really delighted to have Jada Harmon also join us this evening for a special chat in the Delaware Watershed breakout room. She's with National Parks Conservation. There you are. Hi, Jada. Thank you for being here. So I'm about to open up those rooms and let folks jump in. If you need help getting to where you want to go, just let me know in the chat which room you'd like to go to, and I will be most happy to get you there.